Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the business leaders, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. This week, Louis is off and has been replaced by Nick, who joins Ann to speak with Matthew Anderson, the founder and CEO of Vanguard Scientific, a systems and solutions provider servicing the botanical industry. Their mission is to deliver the capability to manufacture the highest quality, most valued oils and extracts routinely and cost-effectively in the cannabis and hemp industries. Full disclosure here, Vanguard Scientific is a client of KCSA. Matthew's journey into the legal marijuana industry is an interesting one. So don't sit back, lean forward. Now on to our conversation with Matt, Ann, and Nick.
Hey, Nick. I'm so excited to be recording with you today.
Glad to be back. It only took Louis having to leave the state so I could sneak back on the microphone again, but I'm back.
Yay! Tell us what's been going on. What's new and exciting in your life?
I believe this episode's coming out March 5th, and I'll be getting married about 9 days after this episode drops. So excited about that. Getting married out in Phoenix to my beautiful fiance, Quinn. So we're all wrapped up finally on the planning and stuff on that end. So it's going to be a smooth couple of weeks until that point. So I'm excited.
Is there going to be any cannabis integrated into your wedding weekend?
Yeah, I think we're going to try. Well, it's going to be in Arizona, which is obviously a medical state. But I think I'm going to try and do something, as long as there's no cops listening to this recording, is something similar. So I went to a wedding last summer in Nova Scotia that had a really,
wanted to go there.
It was beautiful. We were out in Halifax, but you know, Nova Scotia has all their cannabis stores. They sell them in the liquor stores out there, and so I think it was the groom. He's originally from there, and so he set up a tent right next to the main dining area where everybody was sitting, and he kind of made it like a smoker's lounge, and it was really cool. So he had all these cannabis products, all the joints and pre-rolls and stuff that you could have there, and then he set up some chairs, had like some nice Cheeto bags and stuff, you know, for all the munchies that people will get, as if there was like
don't make them Cheetos, because there's going to be girls in pretty dresses and guys with their nice suits on, and they don't need the orange fingerprints everywhere.
Yeah, no orange fingerprints, though. We are serving barbecue, so you know it's still
never
messy.
mind.
Which we're doing Little Miss Barbecue, which if anybody in Arizona is listening right now and you haven't had Little Miss Barbecue, go get it. Even if you're from California, you can just make the drive. I think they're open for like 3 hours a day because they run out of food. Yeah, it's delicious, and you're gonna miss out. But our friends set up like this really cool like smokers lounge and stuff for that. So you know, I still have to make the ask because we're doing this at my parents' house, so I got to make sure that they would be okay with something like that.
I somehow think they're going to be just fine with it.
Well, I don't know if people know this, but I don't know if I've actually shared the story before, but when I went to college was the same year that Arizona went medical. And so my dad got his med card, and he turned my bedroom into his weed grow room. So I think
I knew that, but I don't think you've ever shared that on the air. So
yeah, it was pretty wild. I was gone for like 2 months, and I was just at ASU. It was only like 15 minutes down the street, so it's like I could come back and stay. But he moved everything out of my room. He set up the lights and the full setup. He was super excited about it, and like he had 3 plants going. And
wow,
you know, it was pretty wild.
An OGer.
Yeah, he's an OGer, and he had never done like any kind of growing as far as my knowledge before that point, but as soon as he could, he was all about it, him and his friends. But
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's jump in. We are talking to a client of ours today, Matthew Anderson from Vanguard Scientific, and I think let's jump into it, Nick.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a great one.
Matt, thank you so much for being on the Green Rush. We're really excited to talk to you today.
Excited to be here, Ann.
So your journey is a lot like cannabis entrepreneurs, it isn't in a straight line. It's not like you went to school majoring in cannabis extraction. So tell us about your path to Vanguard Scientific and the cannabis industry as a whole.
A much more troubled youth than that, for sure.
Well, we maybe don't need to go into all of the troubles of your youth, but
It all started with international business school.
Oh.
But it gets a little more colorful from there. At 20 years old, I ended up building a still to make moonshine in my garage. So 2 retrofitted kegs, a bunch of copper piping, and a Bunsen burner. And the result was some very bad bathtub gin. But we got better. So over what was 7 years, we ended up building out the Enlightened Grain Spirits portfolio of non-juniper gins and savory botanical spirits. So I literally started prior to cannabis as a moonshiner and then had to distribute it. So I turned into a bootlegger. And to really compress a long story to short, I was invited to the Food and Wine festival at Pebble Beach in the mid-2000s, and I did an infusion of one of our chanterelle mushroom infusions, a culinary mushroom infusion with an Oregon genetic of cannabis, Hindu Kush. Our first distillery was in Portland, Oregon. And what we ended up doing, and I'm not sure if anyone that's listening is aware of this, but the hospitality industry, specifically the folks in the back of the house, the chefs of this world, like to participate, or I should say recreate in cannabis. So we had kind of knocked some socks off by creating this, really interesting savory tippler that also, got you high, for lack of better words. In making that product and kind of knowing a number of people throughout the country that were enjoying our spirits, I was contacted by a group that was ultimately working in legislation in Florida under Senate Bill 1030, which was the charter from the Surgeon General to manufacture efficacious medicines, specifically for epileptic children. So if you wonder how the heck I got into cannabis extraction, it was kind of the back door of moonshining and bootlegging that moved me into this space where not many people were talking about the manufacturing of regulated ingredients, and expertise was kind of born from there. Through a really crash course in understanding what it means, to deliver a Schedule I narcotic to the marketplace as it was seen in Florida at that time, I was ultimately invited by a small private equity group, MacArthur Capital, to join as a partner. We ended up raising 3 venture funds in the space and deploying capital. And the very first company was a concept that I was a co-founder of, which is Vanguard Scientific. And we built one piece of equipment, the Midas program, which still exists today in its 5th iteration. And the entirety of the business at that point was to build a medical grade device that could manufacture that efficacious medicines. Since then, the company's expanded into a technology integration business, which we can touch on at some point. But if you're saying it wasn't a straight line to get into cannabis extraction, you are 100% correct.
Yeah, Matt, Nick here filling in for Lewis this week. So before we get too deep into Vanguard, what was the reasoning for wanting to start the booze business? How did you find yourself getting into that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was early 2000s, and this was before savory botanical spirits were coming out, right? So that you had vodka, and then you had really juniper forward gins. So this was before folks like Hanger One had really made it to market, or Hendrick's gin with a strong cucumber. And what I was doing in between my time working in international business and then this was, I was staging or working underneath a chef, master saucier from Le Cordon Bleu, and I was running his bar at night. And really what we were seeing was all the cocktails that were coming out of the bar program were not pairing at all with the food, right? So I had a savory scallop dish and it was paired with a cosmopolitan martini, right? So there was this big disconnect. And whether it was a wild hair or divine intuition, I would always err to me being less than intrinsic in that regard. We created a weird and really esoteric portfolio of savory infusions. We made an Earl Grey black tea and sage infusion. We made a Tuscan rosemary and Spanish lavender infusion, a Tupelo honeycomb and mandarin orange blossom, a ginger and wildflower. And we were making these in the garage, and wrapping them in butcher paper, and selling a really bespoke and craft product. And I had some really special bar guests and friends that supported the initial endeavor, and some great advisors that, while they advised against going against the likes of Bacardi and Grey Goose and Belvedere, ultimately rallied by my side. And by the time that I sold the business, we were in 17 states.
Wow.
The company still exists. Yeah, it's international currently. And it was just a really, really interesting foray into kind of a very similar or parallel market to maybe where adult use CPG cannabinoid products are going to be in the future, right? So regulated distribution and manufacturing, and a lot of the same controls, be it GMP or generally recognized as safe.
I love it. That's such like a great entrepreneurial story. Like I just see you in the garage right now, like making your own gin. I was thinking that maybe that it was going to be more for like college house parties and stuff, not that you were actually building like a full legitimate business. So that's very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, we had some fun at the same time.
Okay, so the reason you're here, though, we do want to learn more about Vanguard, though. So give us a little bit more of building out that company, and then also just kind of where you guys are at now. Like, who are your customers, and where are you guys finding yourselves fitting into the cannabis supply chain?
Yeah, sure. So what we did first with the Midas program, like I was mentioning, is we created this really specialized piece of equipment focused on terpene capture. For those that don't know, that's the most delicate part of the cannabis or hemp plant. And it actually was a piece of equipment that was built to be able to work across a range of botanics. While we began installing these systems in some of the multi-state operators that our fund as well as other related funds were operating, we began to learn the real problems facing the processing industry. And one of the parallels we use in speaking to customers is, if you think about processing or extraction as one step, you're mistaken. You need to think about it more of like oil and gas. And the concept is, you don't put a derrick, right, on an oil site in the field and pump that straight into your gas tank. There's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of processes, and a lot of choices that have to be made, whether you're making an E85 blended petroleum or you're working on a super refined product. And really, that was what we saw in the marketplace. So there was a lot of, let's call them consultants. I think consulting is still the fastest growing segment of the cannabis industry, which is pretty unique, right? So anybody that was growing in their closet or processing in their garage kind of became an expert very quickly. And what you saw was these consultants weren't necessarily advising their clients to meet their needs, but more along the lines of providing their intimate knowledge on how to do the processing or extraction from their life experience. So what we saw was operators, whether they were capitalized limited partners or cultivations that were looking to move downstream and create value-added oils, they really weren't concerned whether it was brand A or brand C that was being sold to them. They just wanted to make sure that they had the right technology to produce the final cannabinoids and extracts that they were looking to make. And then we even unpacked that a little bit further, and we said, well, geez, I don't know if anybody really knows at this time what type of oils they're trying to make, right? Or this was really specialized knowledge, let's say 2015, 2016, and even 2017. And we really kind of stepped back and said the thesis was not all oils are created equal, right? So much like the IT industry in normal business, right? Imagine you're a business operator and you're looking for information technology support. Well, prior to the IT guy coming, you had assistants running around with pieces of paper and looking for filing cabinets to try to keep things organized. And the IT guy came and said, I'm gonna give you an email client and spreadsheets that worked. You weren't really concerned whether it was a Microsoft software or it was an Apple computer. You just wanted consistency and you wanted performance. So from that, Vanguard created our technology review board and really stepped back as technology integrators. And what a technology integrator really does in other industries, and what we do in this industry, is we listen to the client. So through needs analysis and fact finding, we understand things like what their throughput demands are, what their starting products are, what their goal finished products are. And now, as the industries continue to mature, what regulated market they're looking to sell into, right? So again, under that auspice, and not all oils are created equal. Maybe you want to make a natural ingredient or a nutraceutical grade product. Well, there's not only steps and different types of equipment that are needed, but then there's also regulatory environment changes than to say if you wanted to make a pharmaceutical API. So we really started to understand and grasp its systems and solutions that's going to create a value difference from our clients that work with Vanguard. And we provide world-leading systems across a myriad of suppliers in a technology agnostic portfolio and don't charge any markup for that. Where we find value with our clients, our return business. We kind of call it Vanguard is one neck to ring, right? When you're starting your processing business or you're running your multi-state operation, you've got a lot of questions and a lot of problems, whether it's your cultivation or your local fire code and safety compliance. And in that entire ecosystem of processing, from the time the material comes out of the field, tracing it all the way until you turn it into a final formulated product, Vanguard's there alongside of the client, providing consultative advisory services and technology integration services.
I think it's really interesting, and I've never really thought about this before. Not saying communications is directly analogous to what you guys are doing at Vanguard, but it seems at its core, as this industry was getting off the ground, there was this need for a professionalism and a systems, put into place in order to scale a business that has now become legal. So it's an interesting, because I'm finding myself nodding, not that anyone can see me, this is a podcast, along with what you're saying, and it does call for this need for the cannabis industry to have access to all of the things that make it run better that any other industry would need. So there's no question there. That was just me waxing poetic. But what you did say, you guys are able to process other plant-based materials, right? So if a psychedelics company came to you, is that something that you guys would be maybe psychedelics is a little on the outskirts, but a nutraceutical company and the like, you could work with them too.
I would say psychedelics are timely. I think you could say that.
They're having a moment.
Yeah, I think the expansion of plant-based consciousness, right, or the freedom of consciousness through the accessibility of plant-based ingredients or naturally derived ingredients are going to have a range of effects. We do know how to extract psilocybin, just if you had asked, but focusing on the ability to provide what was now being called biopharmaceutics, a stable and consistent platform to responsibly and repeatedly manufacture base ingredients is something that's at the heartbeat of Vanguard.
I want to jump back to something you were saying where it's like you're working with clients that are telling you what they're looking for, and I imagine that gives you a lot of unique insights and range of information and data when they're asking you for these things. You get an idea of like what kind of new products that they may be wanting to create and help hit the market. Do you see these kind of trends, or are you seeing that different companies are trying to make different types of products and the beverages or edibles that we're seeing out on the market?
Absolutely. It's important to mention that we are very conscientious of the intellectual property of our clients. So as we enter into agreements with our client partners, we have very clear statements around what background IP we bring and provide for technology transfer, and then have strong IP collaboration and foreground IP agreements to make sure that those specialized formulas, processes, or methodologies that a client stakeholder has doesn't become a product of Vanguard and sold. So that's kind of an opening disclaimer, and something that, given the clients we work with, we respect in a great deal. But to your point around kind of being able to see around the corner or see where the market's trending, our technology review board has and continues to be one of the most valuable assets we have.
And talk a little bit about who is that made up of?
Yeah, so first and foremost, protecting our clients' foreground intellectual property and working with them to help them optimize their processes is what we do. So we work with a select group of clients, and I would say we certainly focus on quality over quantity. but do engage in research or problem statements. For instance, beverage for us has been a large body of work, and prior to that, remediation or the removal of desired specific, let's call it THC or other pesticides. So really taking a focused look at what is the desired outcome, what's the final product or the goal of, let's say, the consumer packaged goods customer. All of our efforts in technology not only look at how to actually do the process or the application and defining that methodology, but then through a techno-economic lens, making sure it's something that's viable in a process engineering landscape. So we work with process engineering lenses at the same time as we do what we call a technology capability perspective. But yeah, Nick, to your question directly, we do have a really unique seat in a global conversation around where cannabinoids are today and where they will be tomorrow. Understanding, for instance, isolate was the product du jour over the past, let's call it 24 months. And you're going to begin to see trending shifts as the market and the buyer's knowledge of the cannabis plant and other biopharmaceutics develop.
That actually touches on an interview you gave, and you said the future of cannabis is in minor cannabinoids. Can you tell our audience what that is and why you see so much promise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the term minor cannabinoid is a consideration of everything that's in between the two pillared terms that we understand as CBD and THC. So you can become scientific and call them phytometabolites or anandamides or terpenes, or you can consider it as like CBX, right, or THX. And what I mean by that is CBN or CBL or CBC or CBG, and then the same varieties around THC. And what we're seeing as real research is being done, and Vanguard spends time in Israel and other developing and thought leadership countries working with the scientific minds that are analyzing these, is as knowledge is being developed around the endocannabinoid system as a whole, and things are being further understood past a CB1 and CB2 receptor, and how you're finding these combination effects, right? Which is incredibly different than the way that the drug or pharmaceutical industry works today. As you begin to see what's called the entourage effect, or what you're beginning to see is called full spectrum extracts. What I mean to say by that is there are a number of different minor cannabinoids or minor plant components that are coming together, so the sum is equal than more than its parts. And again, that really flies a flag in the face of what's called the Single Drug Convention of 1961. And this is a global kind of legislative mandate that was put out there that really stepped what was called traditional Chinese medicine or Eastern medicines away from the way that Western or modern pharmaceuticals were looking at the treatment of an ailment based around specific and singularly isolated ingredients. So this minor cannabinoid conversation is really interesting, because you're beginning to see a range of beneficial effects, things around positive claims for Alzheimer's disorders and dementia, analgesics, aging, assisting in things like pain or arthritis. And then also a lot of the mental benefits that you're seeing from the post-traumatic stress syndromes, mental wellness being served in such research projects as the Wounded Warriors Project or other military-related applications. So that term minor cannabinoid is something that I continue to place a large value on, and we continue to scope our clients' facilities to be able to meet. Because as you start to see overproduction of things like THC or isolated CBD, you're going to see the commodity market begin to develop. But it's those minor cannabinoids that have specific use cases that carry a certain amount of scarcity is where you're going to continue to see or value premium for those specific extracts.
So I'm really interested in, because you're working with these companies that are trying to do all these really creative things. What do you think wins in the end of the day? Like, what, as you work with these different producers and stuff, what is it that's going to actually help them separate themselves in the long run? It feels like, there's new companies trying to pop up every day, say that they have this new innovative product, but what really is going to be the innovative, form factors or different types of products that you think are going to really make a difference?
That's a great question, and I could unpack it in a
unpack
We're
it, man. I
also
wanna
not
know.
asking you to pick a favorite.
No.
Or if you have one, pick it.
What
Yeah,
I'll say is it starts with optionality, Nick. So we discuss our clients' needs, like I said, and if it's a pharmaceutical company and they're looking to get to a singular API and it's a razor-focused research project with a specific defined amount of capital, then we tailor that project scope to deliver that one success metric. But if it's an enterprise looking to get into this space, what we do is really focus on the ability for each extraction step to leave the largest amount of doors open for modulation or extended formulation capability downstream. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is to say full spectrum extracts using passive solvents. So specifically the use of subcritical and supercritical CO2, which is a non-volatile extraction solvent, captures the widest range of total phytocannabinoids in the plant, right? So total available cannabinoids in the plant. And that allows you to have a setting in which, if you're dealing with nutraceuticals or natural ingredients, to begin to continue to focus down and create more highly concentrated specific cannabinoid formulas. Or if you're working in the realms of pharmaceutics, you then can move into what are called post-processing steps or formulation steps, in which you have a whole plant extract that's representative of the actual germplasm or plant that was in the ground, the original source ingredient, with the least amount of adulteration as possible as it reaches its final product. So optionality before we begin discussing delivery mechanism, form factor, bioavailability, or encapsulation for things like beverage, for dissolvability, that's the first step. And then at each step of the processing or post-processing life cycle, we again address those same conversations. Is this for bioavailability, or is this for remediated capabilities to be sold over the counter? Are we looking to have international export, or is this something really highly potent that you're looking for a clinical trial? So it just, the lenses that we slow down with our clients to apply against their, what they believe to be success metric, again, kind of defines how and why different clients or different segments of this industry are pursuing processing extracts in different light.
Are you able to get, you know, because you have this access to data, you know, are you able to kind of get a head start as to what the consumer ultimately wants, and are companies being reactive enough to that? Or is it everyone's just trying to figure this shit out, basically? And, you know, I guess, is it a sophisticated enough industry that you're able to tell, you know, this is really what the consumers are liking and wanting. It is this full spectrum product. It is, you know, as close to Mother Nature as possible. You know, or are you seeing a lot of your clients just be like, look, guys, I just really want some really good quality CBD. Does that question make sense?
It does. And I tell you, so if you're working from the bottoms up approach, and by that I mean, I've got someone that's got either cultivation in process or access to cultivation, and they're looking to turn that into an extract. What you're doing is looking to create the widest range of option as possible, right? Because they don't yet know what the buyer wants, but we can point them to where we believe the buyer will track to. More sophisticated client engagements, and where we work with larger associations or industry groups of interest, and let's just use CPG beverage, for instance. What we do is we have a targeted success metric from what the client wants. And let's just say, I want to be able to deliver 10,000 cases a year. I want this consistency within a plus or minus of 5% tolerance to a specific product formula. I need this to pass international claims for global offtake and GS1 label compliance. And I need to be able to do this in a EU GMP certifiable method, right? So just a high degree of specificity. And then the question is, how do I make sure that beverage is dissolvable, has good mouthfeel, has consistent flavor, and can be packed in a method that's generally recognized as safe? So a lot of our specialized work, and really where a very interesting portion of our business growth has taken over the past, let's call it 18 months, have been really looking through that lens of I'm a topical brand. We deal with, Fortune 50 companies. We're on every major CPG shelf in the world. And we're now looking at minor cannabinoids and what this could be in regards to anti-aging or blemish control or pain management. And from those lenses, we're being able to make specific system technology recommendations. And then a lot of our expertise work is being done through technological application of things like quality management systems. So that's document control and authorship of the process to meet inside of those, whether it's pharmaceutical, CPG, or nutraceutical environments. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, you guys sit at this really interesting intersection of cannabis and technology. And I would imagine you're using things like, nanotechnology. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what is that as it relates to the cannabis industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So nanotechnology is a buzzword. We can talk around micro encapsulation, nano encapsulation, polymer printing. There's a number of different methods that are being implemented to create encapsulation for controlled dosage. And you can call controlled dosage controlled release or metered release or measured release. And then in each one of those terms have different existing industries that you're selling into or working within. And I was just kind of giving you some pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, and then just natural ingredient language there. Mm-hmm. But depending on what the hurdle is, right? So I need a veganic process and product with no plant, animal-based glycerin. Well, I'm going to take a different method than a standard lipid emulsion, even though lipid emulsion might have the greatest dissolvability. Or I want something that has the ability to remain shelf stable at a potency above a certain milligram per milliliter that other methods wouldn't be available. And the ability for Vanguard's Technology Advisory Board to have predicate experience allows us to, again, optimize our recommendations. There are a number of different nanotechnologies available, and any one of them could get you to a version of that success metric. But if we're trying to do it the most consistently, the most cost effectively, and the most repeatably, then we make different recommendations. And it's kind of that specialized knowledge or recommendation set. And then our ability to say, not only can we define the how, but we can also define the pathway to market in regards to regulation, that our clients are finding it an ongoing or reoccurring life cycle relationship with Vanguard.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about the capital crunch that, U.S. operators and Canadian operators are experiencing and see and know, like, is that really affecting your guys' business? As these operators are struggling, the big MSOs, we saw the ELO report this week about, how much more funds these companies actually have to operate. Do you guys feel that hurt as well? And then how's it going on your side when you're talking with investors? Are they still eager to put their money in, or are you guys finding it a little bit more difficult?
Oh, we should also note you guys are privately held.
Exactly. So thank you for that, Ann.
That was Ann, your PR consultant, and now I'm back to Ann, podcast host. Sorry, Matt, go.
Remarkably similar.
I sound so similar. I know, right?
No, but Nick, it's a powerful question, and I'd be remiss to tell you that it wasn't affecting us directly as a company. Being privately held, being based on revenue, EBITDA, and sales performance, we have I would say a much firmer base in reality versus some of the companies that were affected by balloon economics in the capital marketplace. But that being said, a large amount of our clients were publicly traded companies and are publicly traded companies, multi-state operators and limited partners. And as we begin to see liquidity dry up, the conversations and the engagements that our clients work with Vanguard around are the most capital intensive parts of their business they're going to be spending money on, right? Mm-hmm. So this is facility build outs, equipment procurement,
huge, and then CapEx. Yeah,
exactly right. So I'd say we have, want to grab a number, 35% of our expected revenue last year didn't come in. Sales purchase orders all signed, down payments, everyone's excited to go, but just unavailability of capital. And it really gave us some humble pie, but it also allowed us to recognize how important it is us to meet our client where they are, right? So being a company that's less than 50 employees, right? Being a company that focuses on working with quality clients, let's say less than 20, versus quantity clients, where some companies have installations of 100 plus facilities they work with. We were able to slow down and with project managers and account managers work for the best interest of the client, whether it's restructuring their purchase agreements, working with them upfront on consultation to help them navigate certain needs, maybe phasing out their facility build outs. Just like any technology integration company, we're only as strong as our client's ability to make it to market. So I would say we learned a lot. We became incredibly nimble, and we still preserved a very strong value proposition in the market, even though given downturn. But in regards to company strength, I'm definitely excited that we were not exposed and or listed during that time of bubble economics, like I mentioned.
Do you have plans to go public? Or, well, that's my first question. Then I have a follow-up.
What we say is we haven't built our business to sell. We've built a business that if someone was interested would want to buy. So public markets and accessing availability to capital probably wouldn't be our first choice directly. Staying private and working with capitalized private interests are probably the most stable way to grow. But that being said, given some of the landscape globally and the opportunity to capture the rush of global cannabinoid manufacturing, it really begins to beg the question of how much dry powder can you put to work? And we've had some really interesting conversations with a number of stakeholders over the past, let's say, 6 months, addressing that same question, Ann.
I think it is really interesting because you see such global interest and global growth, and yet the public markets just got hammered over the last year. So stay private. Not that you asked my opinion, but so I want to shift and talk about Oregon. The company is based in Oregon, and really one of the pioneering states in cannabis from a medicinal and adult use perspective. And federal legalization doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, who really knows? But it seems like the industry is going to continue with this very jagged, state by state, bumpy ballot initiative, kind of BS. What can new states learn from Oregon, or what is the state doing right? And then what do you wish it would do more of?
Great questions. First off, I'm incredibly proud to have our operating arm of our business located in the state of Oregon. Prior to cannabis legalization, I think some of the tongue-in-cheek figures were 60% of the world's cannabis came from Oregon, if you want to put it that way. Beautiful growing regions, right? Wine country actually turns out to be weed country. And you've got multiple lineaged traditional market producers that have focused on high quality cannabinoid manufacturing, right? Specific genetics, unique cultivation practices. And one of the reasons why we put Vanguard in such a highly competitive and commoditized market was the whole statement. Let's see if we can bring sand to the beach. Knowing if we can define excellence in quality oils and extracts at a profitability capability in such a compressed market, we know that we were able to transfer that technology and know-how into controlled markets like the merit-based states that we've seen roll out across the East Coast. I'm incredibly enthusiastic about the leadership at the Senate and government level inside of Oregon and the work that they've done and the demand and rigor around the testing requirements. Oregon Department of Agriculture's commitments to pesticides and heavy metals inside of the soils as well as the products gave a consistent confidence to consumers and the reasons why they would be buying from the regulated market versus diversion from the traditional markets. Those weren't easy things to implement. And it's because the government and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission opened their doors and opened the communication to the industry, the stakeholders of cultivation and manufacturing and processing, and worked with them through rapid reform, that we were able to see this industry go through the jagged edges like you discussed, but then reach a point where there's stability. to be able to walk into an Oregon dispensary today and still find a gram of cannabis for $25 is incredible. And to see that preference being chosen because of the strain, the genetic, the soil that it was grown in, the shelf appeal, and then watching that translate into high quality craft extracts in a world where you see, let's call it big box mentality, creating cannabis beverage, right? And the conversation is, I want a sugary beverage that has the highest degree of potency possible, and I don't necessarily care where it came from or what methods were used. And that catches an even market price. What you're seeing in Oregon is a craft spirits movement. You see the Pappy Van Winkles of the world, right? These limited allocation genetics being processed under really specialized methods using really high-end, let's use quote unquote stills for the distillation parallel. And you're finding the best, let's call them liquor stores, right? But in this case, dispensaries, buying this allocated product and charging that premium price. And they're finding a consumer to meet the market. So you can buy a quarter here in Oregon for $50, or you can buy 2 grams, right? It all depends on what that buyer preference is. So again, the whole view of being able to bring sand to the beach and understanding what quality really means in an adult use conversation has been very special. And then to have the same thought leadership on the medicinal side, understanding how big the medical market in Oregon is and was, what you get is a strong voice of patient and an understanding around titrations or ratios of CBD to THC. And you have this elongated history of natural practicing of what they call just natural medicine. And it's a really neat microcosm to come from as we begin to kind of expand our conversation globally.
I love all that. That sounds like Oregon's got a lot of great stuff going on, but is there anything that you wish that the state would be doing, or something that it could be doing that would help it, continue to be a leader in this space?
Yeah. I think the compact that was put forward by the Oregon governmental leadership to support California's deficit of compliant or clean cannabinoids is a very large and interesting opportunity. So what I mean by that is, in the alcohol industry, in the days of post-prohibition, what you saw was state-by-state compacts entered in which they were mutually recognizing product so you could ship across state lines. And I think that the ability for Oregon to provide leading quality cannabis in an interstate commercial transaction is probably going to be one of the touchstones that lead us towards a global legalization effort. And I'm just really impressed with Senator Wyden and the other members of the leadership in putting forward some of these thought leadership thoughts, right? I mean, these real kind of provocative considerations of kind of taking the federal legislation and saying, okay, we have to lead by example. So I'm really impressed in that regard. Things they could do that they aren't doing. I don't think that there's much sense in really talking about that, Nick. I think they're doing so much positive that you got to make some enemies as you make hard decisions for the best interest of your economy overall. And while there might be certain stakeholders that are frustrated that they have upper bounds limits on total amount of cannabinoids per dosage, I think they're leading with safety, understanding they had to do the same thing in alcohol, and as such are going to take a more pragmatic approach.
Is there an idea of timing for interstate commerce with the California-Oregon partnership? Or is this, I guess my question is this like super aspirational? Or do you really think this is going to happen in the next 6, 9, 12, 18 months?
Look, I mean, I think aspiration is an important part of the whole conversation, but depending on what happens here in the next presidential elections, depending on how you begin to see the FDA treat the Farm Bill of 2018 for hemp, as you begin to see continued focus for decriminalization, I think the way that the proposed compact has been drafted really focuses on the stabilization of the cannabis industry. And I think it aligns very well with the stakeholders in California that are not these traditional market or legacy gray market manufacturers, but these legal stakeholders who have been kind of waiting and dealing with what was known as Proposition 64 in California to be able to have access to clean cannabinoids. The fact of the matter is, even to date, the testing protocols, the laboratory protocols that are being mandated by the California government, or the regime, are currently underfunded. So the ability to leverage that requirement of quality, cleanliness, whether it's clean, green, certified, or other, I think is a great opportunity and something that very well may be acted upon inside of the next 6 months.
Gosh, I hope so, because
Lewis has $1 bet on it, so.
I want to stick on the topic of drug policy. I was actually able to go to the Vanguard Magic Hour party at MJ Biz, which if anybody missed that party this last year,
It was so cool.
You totally missed out. It was a great time, and you guys did a great job putting that together. But I want to talk about what you guys did with having Betty Aldworth there, the executive director from SSDP, and talk about the work that you and Vanguard do with SSDP, and just why it was important to have her be part of that event.
Yeah, great. First, Betty is a force to be reckoned with in her own right. From the work she's done foundationally from NCIA all the way through now to her time at SSDP. What gave Vanguard the intent, understanding, and importance to work so closely with the Students for Sensible Drug Policy was the real kind of glaring fact that there was no monetary benefit to our company, right? We work and participate with DPA and MPP as well, but not on such a scale. And one of our company thesis is we have to be stewards of the plant, right? And one of the terms we use is legalizing consciousness. So SSDP's charter is ending the war on drugs. And you can find video clips of Betty on the UN floor saying those very things. But the fact that there's no give money to SSDP and gain greater access to sell cannabinoids in a market makes it a very pure play in the way that we look at it. And being able to create a space like Magic Hour when there's an event and there's 60,000 people and plenty of parties to go to, but to come to a space amongst your peers, so let's just call it vested stakeholders that are in it for more than just the money, and then to listen to someone like Betty and like Lauren and like the group at SSDP and the work they're doing is aspirational, to Ann's point earlier, right? It says we're here for something more. We're stewards of plant sciences. We're serving Mother Nature. We're here to change the conversation around treating ailments and treating for cures, because this system that didn't exist in our textbooks, the endocannabinoid system, has actually been around forever. And what has happened since we've written that out of history, and what's happened since we've written the productivity of hemp opposed to cotton out of industrialization, or we should say hemp created fibers instead of plastics from petroleum, right, are all very large socio-political conversations. And being able to create the space for that conversation to be not so formal, but more enjoyable, right, allows tough conversations like privatized prisons to kind of bubble to the surface, right? The fact that in a privatized prison, the average cost for a night at that hotel costs more than a Holiday Inn Express is astounding, right? And then you kind of begin to unpack that a little bit more, and you start to say, well, geez, the hard part about that is privatized prisons are the single largest funder for the sheriff's union. And oh, by the way, the sheriff's union is the largest union in the United States, second only to the longshoremen. And then you look at federal civil search and seizure for nonviolent drug offense, and you also begin to dimensionalize just the socioeconomic piece, right? There is a money part that needs to be addressed. There are stakeholders that are currently being paid from that stream of income, and we can't be ostriches, right? We can't just stick our heads under the ground and say, we know what's right, we have to fight for that, and they'll one day listen. Quite the contrary. As business operators and actors now in commerce, it's our job to build those bridges to enable those folks that may be on the quote unquote ledge to back off, right? To change their perspective, to mature their thinking, and to evolve and end the war on drugs. So that's me opining around SSDP, but I do love Betty, Lauren, and the entire team.
We are definitely SSDP stands.
Yeah, for especially around MJ Biz when it's, there's so much money being thrown around there in Vegas, everybody's looking to party. Personally, I really appreciated that you were making sure that they were able to use your event as a platform to be able to continue to get that message out. So thank you for that.
That's awesome, Nick. I'll make sure to tell the team. That's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Matt, you've been so generous with your time, and we have 2 more questions for you. We ask these of each of our guests. So one is about failure, and usually Lewis opines on this, but I'm doing it this time. And I read this quote from Thomas Edison, at least it was attributed to Thomas Edison, who said that I have not failed, I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Can you talk about a time that you failed and what you learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I in early years in the alcohol space, I received a order from the largest retail chain in the state of Florida, and we were selling. The state of Florida is 80% of all clear spirit sales in the U.S. I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
Oh yeah, and they
Those old folks can drink, huh?
yeah, and they sell to the cruise ships. So
Okay.
that makes
Yeah.
yeah, what I received was just golden goose. I had thought, right? I had 46 stores, and we were gonna be able to sell them, and it was gonna be wonderful, and we were gonna make a lot of money. The reality is we weren't able to deliver, right? So we delivered the first time, but then when depletions or when the product sold through, right, in store number 1 in the Panhandle ran out on Tuesday, and my sales guy went to the Panhandle on Tuesday, but Wednesday and the southeast tip of Florida, they ran out, right? We began to realize that our eyes were bigger than our appetite. We didn't have the logistics in place to be able to make market. So the humility around just not being enough to be able to want to do something, but you have to be able to deliver on that promise gave me a lot of humility as I took next steps, both through the private equity side of this industry, but also now specifically in Vanguard. I mean, we're operating in 6 countries, and we're asking clients to spend a lot more money with us than a single bottle of gin, right? So those lessons gave me a real, let's call it feet on the ground understanding. While we can be aspirational, we can talk about shaping the future of this industry, there are some real nuts and bolts business practices that we are grounded in, and that's allowing us to deliver success.
Awesome. Wow, 6 countries. I don't think I realized that you guys were that globally across. What countries are you guys operating in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the United States, Canada, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Israel, and Malta. Latin America, Germany, and actually Jamaica are all part of Q1 this year. But real fortunate around the clients, and that's been, again, a very strategic decision, Nick, opposed to working with everyone. What we really wanted to do and really sought out are marquee clients that are going to make a name for themselves in excellence, right? So we're really, really fortunate with our client partners, and they're allowing us to be capable to represent and show what we're actually capable of doing, understanding that we're only part of the business, setting the equipment up, defining a quality management system, helping them prepare for a GMP audit. Those are all things that we do. But at the end of the day, it's the client and their management team that stands up, that operates their business, that ultimately makes us look good.
So in this episode, we've been speaking with Matt Anderson, CEO of Vanguard Scientific. Matt, we got one last question for you. I know we've talked a lot about your guys' business, the aspirations of the industry, drug policy and everything. But if you had to put, just one big story that you think the media is missing or should be talking about when it comes to the cannabis industry, what do you think that story is? What are we all missing right now?
Jeez.
Putting you on the spot, man.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I could put out there is, total addressable market conversations currently. If you're in the entrepreneurial side of this business, and I'm saying this for Lewis and all you because it is the green rush, right? We're talking about capital in the industry. People use what's called a TAM calc to justify what market share they're going to capture, which ultimately justifies what their potential value is if they go to perform. The interesting thing about those numbers most often they're discussing total numbers of cannabis consumers. Or perhaps they're saying CBD could go into, let's use beverage. What actually can be addressed using minor cannabinoids are segments like disruption of alcohol and moving into euphorics, our pain management, our mental health and wellness, our therapeutics, our functional beverages and functional foods, our nutraceuticals and natural supplements, and then are also some of the largest leaders in other consumer packaged goods. So when you really back a macro lens away from saying, what can this plant do? Aside from opening the door to plant-based ingredients and changing the conversation arguably forever around naturopathic or homeopathic capabilities to meet ailments, what you see is a multi-trillion-dollar addressable market if you can use the right lens. So I think that what people are maybe missing or maybe not framing right, amidst the capital crunch, amidst the capital markets having issues being able to justify their current business and revenue plans, as we continue to see larger consumer packaged goods, pharmaceutical, or industrial entities apply their perspectives, that macro lens provides a very, very fertile environment for strong market growth.
I love it. Matt, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure.
And Nick, thank you so much for having me. I'd love to come back anytime, and congratulations on running such a great podcast as well as firm.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Our thanks to Matthew Anderson, CEO of Vanguard Scientific. Check them out online at vanguardscientific.com. They're also on Twitter at Vanguard360 and on Instagram at Vanguard Scientific. And as always, thank you so much for listening. If you want to find us, check us out on Twitter at @the_greenrush or Instagram at @the_greenrush_podcast, or email us at greenrush@KCSA. We love your feedback and guest ideas. And don't forget to subscribe in your favorite podcatcher. Nick, thanks so much. It was a pleasure today. One shake, tay, one shake. Dang it!
Oh my God, that was great. No, you have to keep that. One shake, day, one shake.
One take, Shay. One take.